Coming up on this episode.
Someone's trying to take my grounding mat from underneath me. I immediately opened my eyes because I was like, what is happening? It looked like a human man standing next to the bed, was doing like cartwheels and acrobatics and trying to be like silly, like a clown. Looked at it and I said, you don't have to do all that. Just show me yourself. Came towards me by the bed. It shrunk down, like it started morphing into itself. It was real ugly, real wrinkly looking. I was lifted up then into the air, and I said I was probably about 10 feet off the ground, and I was, horizontal. I would describe it like a tic tac, very shiny, shaped like a tic tac. It was not touching the ground. I immediately think to myself, oh, they're getting ready to replace an implant. So I walk into the ship. It's much bigger inside than what it appeared to have been on the outside. And I remember seeing those papers, seeing this disheveled human looking guy, this trailer that I had just walked by outside. And I'm thinking, this doesn't seem alien, like fully, because clearly the beings that had levitated me off the ground, those were not human beings.
Come explore the depths of consciousness, where we raise the vibes and open minds.
I want to share with you one of my most unusual ET experiences that I've had. And let me just start off by saying that I have two dogs next to me, and one of them is very whiny today. She's right basically behind me. Okay, so sorry in advance for that. I've shared some of my encounters on our podcast before in other episodes. I've shared even what I'm getting ready to share with you on other people's podcasts as well, but you may not have seen it. And I always like to kind of take my time and tell it how I want to tell it, maybe not as I'm being interviewed, because I don't know, I feel like I remember more and stuff when I'm just saying it in my own way and kind of on my own time, if that makes sense, without the pressure of feeling like I need to be quick or be super eloquent for somebody else's podcast. So that's why I wanted to do this separate sort of mini episode, if you will. I know it's a little bit different than what we normally do on the Grounded Galactic podcast, but I just felt like it was right today. It was right. So this happened to me in summer of 2024. I don't remember the exact date. And one of the things that irks me about that fact is that I keep a journal of every single thing that happens to me of a paranormal nature, either in a voice memo, a text message, an email I send to myself, or something. As soon as it happens, or at least within 24 hours, I will record that information somewhere. This particular experience, I recorded in a voice memo, and I ended up accidentally deleting it from my phone, thinking I had transferred it to my computer to be transcribed later. And I actually went to go look for it the other day. It's nowhere to be found. And the reason why I say this is just because I like to have an exact date of things, which I actually could find because I do have other videos related to it that happened like the next morning, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the point is, I don't have my exact words from right after it happened. And just like with any memory, I mean, you can think back to Christmases from 2 or 3 years ago, and you can think of probably 75% of what happened that day, but you don't remember 100% of it. So it bugs me that I don't have my original notes, because anytime I go to tell a story, especially one that's a little bit lengthy, I always like to go and look back at my notes, my little diary/journal that I'm keeping of these types of things, so I can be refreshed by the little details that I have maybe forgotten. But people always think, "Oh, you forgot," or they might hear a podcast that I talked about it on a few years ago, and something about it will be a little different than what I'm getting ready to say now, and they will all of a sudden just judge me for, "You know what? You must be lying. That's all fake information. You're just making it up." And in reality, it's just that it's a memory that happened a few years ago, and I don't remember every minute detail, which is why I keep a journal and why I go back to those when I know I'm getting ready to tell this story in public. So I had to go back and watch a previous podcast episode that I'd said it on the Paranormal 411 podcast a couple years back. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember now. I remember some of the details that I had forgotten. I don't know that you needed all that backstory. I just think that with people that do have paranormal stories or that claim to have been abducted by ETs or claim to have seen Sasquatch or had experience with angels or ghosts or whatever it is, that unfortunately a lot of times there's a subset of people that just automatically write off everything they say, or maybe that same subset of people or another subset of people are just interested in what they're saying just so they can find holes in it or somehow prove that person wrong or find some type of validation in what they believe that is contrary to what this person is saying, just because someone might have a gap in memory or seemingly their story has changed over time, which I don't think that you're going to find that my story has changed based on what I've said before. I just think that little details might be out of order or maybe misremembered or missed altogether that I might have remembered previously, but I just don't remember now. I hate having to give long backstories. People that have had UFO experiences tend to have long backstories because it's kind of a defense mechanism. We know that people are really going to believe us for the most part. So it's almost like I'm working my way up to even telling this story because it seems so out there, even to me, that I know everyone else is gonna think that too. So, maybe I'm sort of trying to soften the blow to my own ego right now, just because I know that once I publish this and put this out, there will be some people that will be interested and intrigued, and then there are gonna be some people that are probably gonna send me some strange messages and or make some rude comments or whatever. Whatever, who cares? I have to not care. One of the reasons why I do this sort of thing is to show people that you can talk about what has happened to you. It's okay. Nothing bad is gonna happen. It might seem like you're being really vulnerable or maybe you're taking a risk, and in some regards, it can be somewhat risky depending on where you are and where you work and how nosy are people are in your life. Thankfully, I kinda work for myself and I don't have to deal with an employer seeing this and being upset by it in any kinda way or whatever. So and I'm glad to have a supportive family. Okay. Okay, I think I've softened it enough. I think I can talk about it now. Sometime in the summer of, I think, 2024. That's what I'm gonna go with. It was a normal night. I don't remember the day of the week, but it certainly wasn't a weekend because I know I was the only one there. So, I had gotten up to let my cat out, which usually happens between 2 and 3 AM that time of year. And, we go through a whole routine, and we feed him and let him out. I come back to bed, and usually at that time of night is when my insomnia really kicks in, and sometimes I just end up staying up for the whole rest of the night, or at least it takes a really long time for me to fall back to sleep. So that's really when my mind starts to wander. That's kind of what my mindset was. My mind was just wandering, and I was trying to fall asleep. And on that particular night, I remember that I was sleeping on a grounding mat or an earthing mat, which I don't always sleep on, but that particular night I was. I don't know if you've ever slept on a grounding mat, but they can be really powerful. If you've ever been on one, especially in a full moon, you can really feel it. So anyway, sleeping on a grounding mat, and I'm laying there on my left side, and I start to feel like someone's trying to take my grounding mat from underneath me. And the mat goes all the way under me, so it's under my pillow and then goes the length of my body, and then it's longer than my feet, so it's the whole it's like the length of the sheet that you're laying on. So, what I felt like is that someone was trying to take it out from under the pillow, so it was kind of like lifting my head up a little bit, and I was like, "Mm, that's strange." So, obviously, I immediately opened my eyes because I was like, "What is happening?" And as soon as I opened my eyes, I mean, my eyes were adjusted to the dark by then. There was this, I mean, it looked like a human man standing next to the bed, maybe like a foot away from the bed because he needed room for what he was doing. He was, I don't, it kind of looked like a clown mime type character, at least based on what he was wearing and what he was doing. He had on like a white and black, like large stripes shirt, and I want to say black pants. So dark clothes for the most part, long sleeves, and was doing like cartwheels and acrobatics and trying to be like silly like a clown. And I immediately knew because I've had so many experiences to that point and have seen them come to me in so many different ways. And they don't always cloak themselves. But sometimes when they do, it's something like that. It's very strange. It's obviously not just like someone standing next to your bed. Why would there be this clown person doing cartwheels in your bedroom in the middle of the night? I mean, that makes 0 sense. Now, someone will say at this point, "You were dreaming." Nope, I wasn't dreaming. I can tell the difference between a dream and not a dream. This, not a dream. There's my dog next to me. He's not a dream. He's as real as the man that was standing next to the bed. I could have reached out and touched him, okay? So, I'm looking at him, and I immediately knew it was an ET that was just cloaking itself because ETs don't look like that, and they don't act like that, and there'd be no reason for them to do that. The reason why I was seeing that is because it's kinda like they set up this I don't know, maybe it's a plan ahead of time of, like, if she wakes up, then we have to be able to distract her because, I don't know, maybe they know by now that I do wake up and I do remember and I try to remember and I wanna remember, and I have interacted with so many of them before. I don't know, so maybe they have some kind of plan or something ahead of time, but immediately knew that it was an ET, so I just looked at it and I said, "You don't have to do all that." I was like, "Just show me yourself. I'm not gonna be scared. We've I've done this before," type of thing. So, as soon as I said that, it came and came towards me by the bed, and it shrunk down, like, it started morphing into itself. Okay, I'll just get to the point. It started morphing into itself or what I assume it really looks like. It could have still been cloaking, I guess, but so it shrunk way down. I would say the clown figure was maybe about 5 to 5.5 feet tall. It was hard to tell because I was laying down and stuff as far as the height, but once it was standing right next to the bed, it was definitely more like only 4 feet tall at that point. Definitely not human looking anymore. The clothes changed to just like a black robe or a dark robe. It could have been dark brown, dark blue, or something. I mean, it was dark in the room, but it was a dark hooded robe. The hood was not on the head. And it was real ugly, real wrinkly looking, and I wanna say, like, dark brown skin, almost no neck, like or maybe just the neck was just so thick that it's just, like, head into shoulders, it just didn't really seem like it had any defined, like, chin or neck or whatever. And actually, I had this experience before I ever watched the movie Communion. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. I had read the book but I'd never seen the movie, and when I saw the movie with Christopher Walken and he's having his experience with some of these beings at the very end, I'd say they look like that, except in that movie, they were blue, and in my experience, they weren't, they were, like, dark brown, but I just remember seeing that movie being like, "Oh, that's pretty much what they look like," so it kinda blew my mind that anyway, he was trying to pull my grounding mat out from under me. So he was the one trying to pull my grounding mat out from under me at the same time that he's projecting this image of this clown figure out next to the bed. So I see him and I'm like, "Okay, thanks for showing me yourself." Because I do always appreciate when they listen to me, because I have made requests to them before to show me your face, show me what you really look like. Can you stop doing that? I have made requests when I'm lucid enough and not paralyzed, if you will, that I can utter some words or make some movements. Sometimes I can't do anything. I'm just there. And I can see and hear, but I can't my mouth doesn't move, my hands do not move. Or sometimes I have limited mobility and limited ability to say words. And sometimes I have to try real hard. But sometimes it's very easy. I can walk, I can talk. It's just like right now, like I can do anything. And this was one of those times where I was completely lucid. And so I'm looking at him, and then I realize that there's also another one in the room as well who's standing more toward the foot of the bed and was I don't know, I think it was a little bit taller. This is where some of these little details kind of I don't exactly remember, but there were 2. And I get the impression pretty quickly, and they're not talking to me, okay? They're not saying anything to me, but I get the impression really quickly that it's time to go somewhere. That's why he's not trying to take the grounding mat from under me. He's trying to lift me using the grounding mat basically because it's completely under my whole body. So seems like it would be an easy thing to do to lift me from the head using that. So I just basically said, "Don't worry about it. I can sit myself. You don't have to do this." And again, I've had enough of these experiences. I didn't feel threatened by them at any given moment. And it just seemed like it wasn't a big deal. So I just agreed to go with them and said basically, like, you don't have to get me out of bed. Let me walk. I would rather walk myself. So I sat up and I stood up and they acted like they were trying to kind of grab my hand or whatever to lead me. And I'm like, I'll just follow you. Like, I'll just go with you. So they agreed to that, and so they started walking in front of me, and I followed them, and so we go up we're on a split level, so I have to walk up a few steps to get out the front door, and that's where we were headed. So I walk up the 6 steps, up to the living room, and we go straight out the door, and I turn around and close the door, and I was really paranoid about leaving the front door unlocked. So I'm trying to lock the door with the buttons and all of this, and I never go in and out of the front door. I always go in and out of the garage. And so I couldn't remember, like, do I push this button before that button? So anyway, I was messing with the lock, I guess, a little bit too long, and they were quite a bit ahead of me in the yard. And at some point, they got tired of me messing with the lock and, like, not following them, I guess. Maybe they thought I was trying to go back inside, I'm not sure. All of a sudden, they decided, "We're not gonna let you walk anymore." So I was lifted up then into the air, like, they didn't physically touch me, they just, I guess, with their minds or whatever, I mean, I don't know how it works. But I was floating above them essentially, like, tracking with them as they're walking in front of me, and I said I was, probably about 10 feet off the ground, and I was, horizontal like that, and, had my nightgown on and stuff, and we're moving out into the front yard, so we've got a couple acres, and we kinda live in a wooded-ish area. And so we've got trees and stuff all around, and I had just let my cat out, like I said not that much earlier, and I see him running, kind of in front of me down on the ground, and I'm like, "Ah, Charlie, how's it going?" Thought that was hilarious that I saw him running. And, like, I can still talk, and I'm still totally aware, but I wasn't able to walk anymore. So as we're going, they're in front of me, and I start seeing these 2. I wanna say one of them is a ship, and I'm not 100% sure on the other one, and I'll tell you why. Could have been a ship, could have been a trailer, I don't know. So, I start seeing this so we have several trees in the front of our yard, and there was a ship that was like a Tic Tac ship, definitely I would describe it like a Tic Tac, very shiny, shaped like a Tic Tac. There was a door in the middle, like kind of a square cutout that had been opened and raised and was just open. And it was hovering above the ground, maybe a few inches, it was not touching the ground, and I don't remember if there was, like, must have been a light or something underneath, otherwise, I wouldn't have really known it was hovering because it's like 3 AM, okay? We're getting ready to walk inside of it. I'd say it was about the size from the outside, it looked like about the size of a small RV, not huge, not huge. So as we're walking into that and getting closer, or I'm floating, they're walking. I see over, so that was kind of to my right. I see over to the left behind, we have some large trees in the front. So kind of behind the trees poking out, I could see the front of it was another, I don't know if it was a ship, could have been a ship, but it looked like it was sitting on the ground. It was very angular, it very square on the end with a rectangle body. I don't even know how to describe it. Looked like a trailer. Looked like a silver metal trailer with a corrugated door or something on the side that was closed. So it didn't seem like highly technological or advanced alien ship. It seemed like somebody dropped off a trailer in the front yard or something. And someone who looked like a human totally looked like a human, was walking from that direction of that trailer thing toward the Tic Tac entrance where we were kind of all converging. So once we got to the sort of front door of the Tic Tac, they lowered me really slowly to the ground, and now I could walk again. They trusted me now to not run away. I'm starting to go into the Tic Tac, and I can kind of hear the conversation of one of the beings that had been with me with this other guy that was approaching who he kind of looked like a scientist. I don't know how else to describe him. I can tell you if he was wearing a white coat at that moment, but I know that there were people inside the Tic Tac that were. So, but I don't remember what this guy was wearing. He was a white male. Again, I wasn't really focusing on him too much, honestly. I believe he had light brown hair. Maybe he was 55. Couldn't tell you anything else about this guy. So, but I did hear part of their conversation, which I found was super interesting. So, as we're walking in, I hear the gentleman who was coming from the trailer looking thing say to the being who was leading us, and I don't remember word for word, this is where my notes would come in handy. But in a nutshell, what they were conversing about is the some type of metal extraction process that they had been trying, some new process, wasn't yielding the results that they were expecting. So, for the time being, they were going to revert back to their tried and true method, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. And, and as I'm hearing that, as I'm walking into the Tic Tac, I immediately think to myself, oh, they're getting ready to replace an implant because I've known for a long time that I have implants. And so just them talking about like metal retrieval and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't want some janky metal retrieval method that's not working. So I'm glad they're going back to the tried and true old method. So I just thought that was so interesting that they were talking about it right in front of me. So I walk into the ship. It's much bigger inside than what it appeared to have been on the outside. Now, I never looked like I walked in and immediately kind of started looking left. I never looked back behind me to the right, which would have been the whole other half of the ship. Didn't even look, I did never turned around. So I'm coming in and I kind of turn to the left and I'm looking and there is, I'll tell you the first four things I saw. I saw another man laying on what looked like a sleeping bag, a human man, like he was asleep, like he was in his pajamas, like he had also, maybe he was from around here, I don't know, but he was not part of the ET team. Okay. I saw what looked like 3 or 4 scientisty with white lab coat looking beings, ETs over in the far left corner, like talking. I saw in front of me at the back wall, I mean, I would say this thing wasn't huge, huge when I got into it, but it appeared to be at least 2 or 3 times the size on the inside than it was when I was looking at it from the outside. So that was strange. But on the very back wall, there was a huge black, it took up the whole wall like a screen. There was nothing on it though. It was just black. Like, I don't know if it was off or whatever was on there. Like maybe I just couldn't perceive or see, but it was just a black screen. And then in the foreground, if you will, closest to me was a long metal table, and half the table was, like, unused, and the other half that I was closest to, like, right in front of me, basically, there was a gentleman who he just looked kinda like a scraggly-haired college student, honestly, looked like totally human, blonde hair. He had glasses, he had on a white lab coat, he looked a little disheveled, he looked a little tired, very human-like. And he had some type of computer in front of him and some equipment over here to the side. I didn't know what was going on with that. It wasn't huge, just some basic looking equipment that I didn't really recognize other than he had some type of laptop. And the thing that struck me the most about looking around this space was that there appeared to be papers, like physical pieces of paper kind of in stacks, sort of scattered about on various surfaces. And I remember seeing those papers, seeing this disheveled human looking guy, this trailer that I had just walked by outside, and I'm thinking, this doesn't seem alien, like fully, because I mean, clearly the beings that had morphed right in front of my face and levitated me off the ground. Those were not human beings unless they were, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm like, I've never been in a ship and seen papers, like physical papers in stacks. Didn't make any sense to me. So I immediately knew this is the reason why I'm telling this one is because I feel like it maybe is my only remembered one where it was maybe like a human and ET interaction abduction. I've heard people of having those. I've heard people having, government abductions that they pretend they're ETs to scare humans and all this, and I just never experienced that. But maybe this was sort of one of those where the ETs and humans, maybe the government, maybe private contractors, I don't know. We're like working in concert to do something with me and whoever else they wanted to that night. Okay, I'm telling you, this is weird. So I'm standing there in my nightgown, okay, barefoot. I'm looking at this disheveled college looking guy. Yeah, I don't know, he could have been 25 or so. He was young and white. I don't remember his size. So he was Caucasian, thin, tall and thin. And he was kind of sitting on a stool. So I don't know his exact height, but he was probably about 6 foot or so. I'm looking at him and I start to get the impression that, like, I might have been here before. Not that I remember anything. Hmm. But again, I've had enough experiences to know that I will have repeated interactions with them, but I don't always remember. So, since this guy in front of me looked human, I assumed he was human, and I also assumed he could understand what I was saying and could communicate with me easily. Like, I could speak English to him, he could speak English back to me. That was my assumption. So, the other ETs that had come in, they were like off to the side over here. They were doing something else. The other human that was in there, and there may have been more, it's hard for me to remember, were like unconscious. They're like, you know, over here. And so I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity to try to get some information. So I look at this guy and I'm like, have you seen me before? He kind of looks up at me and he's like, yep. I said, okay. I said, so you know me? Yep, yep, yep. And he's like amused that I'm talking to him. He's still doing something on his laptop, getting ready for something. I don't know what he's doing, but he's working and I'm distracting him a little bit. But he was playing along, if you will. And I said, have we had this conversation before? Like, have I said these things before to you? He's like, yes, actually, you have. We've had this conversation. And he starts to kind of giggle, and I'm starting to get his attention more. So he's kind of leaning more towards me and looking at me now. And I said, okay, well, I don't really remember any of those others. I said, but I want to remember you. I said, because I have a feeling you are human, aren't you? And, like, I'm gonna be able to Google you, like, I am a sleuth on the internet, I can find people. And so I said, "Okay, tell me your name." And that's all I needed to know. If I could figure out your name and I can see you, like, I've got a picture in my mind of you, and if I have your name, I could probably find you, like, in real life, you know? That was my goal. Because even though I say all the time to people, I don't need to have proof. I don't need to have evidence. People ask me all the time, well, do you have pictures? Do you have this evidence? Do you got burned circles in your yard? I'm like, no, anything like that. What? But these things are, I don't want to say real to me. They are real. They're not real to me. They are real. There's a difference there. And so it's not that I'm trying to like prove to myself that they're real. But it would really make me feel a lot better if I had something tangible that I could present to people and say, "This is how I can prove to you that what I'm saying is real." Because it just would help me out a lot, not feeling so judged by people all the time. But anyway, because the one and only time I've ever had somebody have an experience with me on a ship that I've shared with in a previous podcast episode, I only knew him for a few years and then he passed away. So he's the only person that could have confirmed that other story that I've told before, one of the other stories that I've told before that happened in 2022. Because we had a shared experience on a ship and knew each other in real life, real life and stuff like that. But so I'm asking this guy, I'm like, okay, tell me your name. So he starts telling me his name. His first name is Michael. That's easy enough for me to remember. Very common name. He starts to tell me his last name, and it's like a last name that I've never heard. It was, and even now, like I have problems with trying to remember it because it was so unusual that I had to ask him. I was like, "Can you say that again? Like, say that again?" I kept asking him to say it again, and he kept saying it again. But then I finally said, "Can you spell that for me? Because maybe that will help me remember it more." It wasn't that it was hard to pronounce, it just seemed very different. So, like, I knew that I was probably gonna forget it. And so he starts to spell it for me, and he's like, B-R. And then as soon as he gets to the R, I start to get the sense that, oops, we've got the attention of some of the ETs and people and things over here in that left corner that we're talking. And that maybe he wasn't supposed to be giving me his name, or that maybe they didn't realize I was so lucid, or maybe I don't know what they were upset about or not upset about. But that was the moment as soon as he said R, the B-R, I was back in my bed. Don't know how I got back in my bed. Don't know what happened after he said the R. No idea. I'm just back in my bed, just sitting there. You know, I wasn't like shaken awake because I hadn't been asleep. It would just be like, right now I'm sitting here. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in the kitchen in my house. That's it. I don't remember how I get to the kitchen in the house. I don't remember how much time it took me to get from here to there, you know. I will say I've always held back with saying what I'm remembering as his last name. I've always either said I don't remember his last name or I've only given the BR. Just because I feel weird about like I don't know how to say this without sounding absolutely nuts, but, like, if it really is some type of private company or government thing and they don't want me to say his name, and maybe by my that's why they were, like, cut it off at the moment that they cut it off after he started spelling it, that if I actually said it in a public forum, that somehow that's gonna put me in danger. I don't really know, but I feel like I wanna share it. And again, I might not even be remembering it correctly because it was so hard for me to remember it. I was asking the guy to spell it. But from what I recall, it was something to the effect of Broadgrath. That's an unusual last name, right? And I don't even know if that's right, but it was something like that, which is why knew I was going to have a hard time remembering it because I've never heard a name like that. Broadgrath. Michael Broadgrath. Anyway, that's all I remember. The next morning, of course, that very night when I came back to my bed, the very first thing I did is I grabbed my phone and I immediately looked at our camera outside to see if there was anything in the front yard. I was looking for logs to see if I had opened and closed the front door, if it had been locked and unlocked, all of that stuff you can get in your app looking at your security stuff. And I'm just like, there's gotta be a video of me walking out of here. Like, there's gotta be, like and so I'm just, like, immediately going through everything, and of course, there's no logs of this. There's no log saying that the front door opened or closed, that the lock was attempted, that there's any video that was captured or anything that night. And I was like, "Well, of course, of course, of course, of course, there's no fucking evidence of that," you know? Great. So the next morning, I did eventually fall asleep. I had voice recorded it in the night, and then the next morning, I was like, "Okay, everybody's gone." I got out of bed. I type my camera, which I do still have video of this, so I can get the date and timestamp off of this so I can maybe put the date on this video. But I go out into the front yard and I'm videoing all around on the ground. Like there's gotta be an indentation. There's a burn mark. Maybe the grass is laying weird and whatever. And the grass had been real dry or whatever. Anyway, there's nothing there like a EMF detector and just an app on my phone and I'm, waving it around and, it was kind of spiking, but it wasn't anything that was, 'cause, it was kind of right next to a pole, like electrical pole. And I'm like, well, it could be just picking that up, So I'm like, well, what the hell? So I go inside. I'm doing the detector around my bed where they had been standing. And of course, it's spiking way up, but also I have several electronics plugged in next to the charger and you got the lamp and I've got several crystals there. And I'm like, well, it could be picking up any of that. And I'm just like, WTF? And but there's something I'm just remembering now that I forgot. So we went out of order a little bit. So right when I came back to bed, okay, came back, and I'm just sitting there like, what the hell? What happened between, him trying to spell his name and me getting back here? My ear was hurting so bad, and I've said before that I know I have implants, and I've always known that I have an implant, like, right here, kind of above my ear, and this ear was just it was hurting, like, deep inside, and I'm like, "Man, what is that about?" And then so I went to the bathroom, and I'm kinda, like, looking to see, like, is my ear bleeding? Of course, nothing's happening, and I do have a picture of me. I took a selfie in the night because my eyes were bloodshot, but that was really the only thing. There wasn't any I'm, like, looking for, like, I don't know, a bald spot here or some type of something, having to do with my ear, a scoop mark or, people report these different things. I've never had anything like that. No physical marks that I can recall. I just remember thinking like, "Yep, yeah, they were talking about an implant." I remember thinking that in the night that that's definitely what had happened. They must have just replaced my implant or extracted it, and maybe they didn't put a new one in or whatever, but there was definitely pain there when I woke up that was not there before. So anyway, I had forgotten that part. But yeah, so the next day I'm like frantically trying to figure out, get the logs from the app and try to find a video and looking for evidence on the ground and evidence in the house and just nothing. Nothing. Like it never fucking happened. And that is extremely frustrating. I wish I could remember more. And of course, one of the first things I did was immediately start Googling this Michael Broadgrass. This name doesn't exist. Of course, I don't have access to everything, all databases all over the world. But I mean, I looked at all the normal places. So I'm either remembering it wrong, I don't know how to spell it, or that wasn't really his name. So maybe, yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else from that kind of stood out. It's the only one that I can remember where I actually saw the outside of a ship. I haven't had any like that. It's usually I stay in my, room or whatever room I'm in when they come, or when I do go into a ship, I just am inside, like, I'm here and then I'm there, and I don't see the outside of it at all. All of a sudden, I may see, like, that I'm going outside of my house and I'm looking at things around, but then all of a sudden I'm inside some other place and I never get to see the outside of it. So it was really interesting to see the Tic Tac ship. And I do believe that was an alien craft because, again, as I said, the outside of it looked much smaller than the inside of it. But that other thing that was in the yard, I just it just seemed very human and just boggled my mind that when I went out there the next morning to look on the ground to look for any type of indentation around there, there was just nothing. I mean, I don't walk to that part of the yard very often, you know? We don't even hardly mow over there because there's so many trees and there's lots of, like, roots and sticks and gumballs and just dirt, so it doesn't get grass really. So it was hard for me to really determine, like, had there even been anything sitting here, but there certainly were no burn marks or any broken limbs or disturbed anything. And I was real pissed that there was no video. I mean, I guess you could say my cat is a witness, but you can't exactly interview a cat. So anyway, I'm more than happy to field questions about this. Yeah, that was really interesting. And maybe I'll tell some more stories as we go along. I wanna one day, like, put all of this in a book. If you have any strange stories, things that have happened to you that you feel you cannot tell anybody about, and certainly would never maybe share in any type of public arena like this, but that it burdens you or that you just wanna share it, you just wanna talk to somebody about it, give me a call. Like, honestly, groundedgalactic@gmail.com. You can go to hartmanfamilymedia.com and find contact information there. You can find me on Facebook. If you're in Arkansas, I run a page called Arkansas UFO and ET Investigations or ArcUFO. We have a little community page, and then I have a separate investigations page, and you can find my email there. Anyway, there's lots and lots and lots of different ways that you can find me if you want to share your story. It's one of the things that I love to offer to people is just to give them the space to share. gonna judge you. I might ask you some questions. I might, if you want advice, if you want to know something, I'm more than happy to give that to you. But if you just want somebody to listen, I'm 100% here for that. So please don't hesitate and know that you're not crazy. There's not something wrong with you. It's not, I don't want to say that it's not something you have to worry about because everyone's feelings can be very different around this. Some people are very scared if they're a contactee or an abductee. Some people are very happy and joyful. Some people have just totally neutral feelings. The whole gamut. Okay. Obviously, it can be very confusing. It can be very disheartening, especially if you cannot talk to anybody about it. I'm super blessed to be able to talk to my family about it, and I have sort of subset of friends I can share this type of thing with, and then I'm at to a point now where I'm comfortable putting this stuff online. I'm not going around to coworkers and going around to just strangers or, maybe other more distant family and friends and talking about this type of stuff openly necessarily. They might ask me a question and I'll answer it, but it's certainly not an everyday conversation. I definitely know of people in circles that are around me that think I'm batshit crazy. That's fine. Then they try to reconcile in their mind this person that they know, that they think that they know, also has these stories, and I can't imagine what goes on in their mind about me. It's kind of funny to think about, but I have a community, like, I have cultivated this sort of little pockets of online and in-person ET and UFO and paranormal communities that I have cultivated over the last few years, so I have people I can talk to, I have friends in this space. And, we have had meetings in the past. We might do a Zoom, we connect online and we message and, we share resources and things. And it's super, super helpful to have people around me like that. And again, if you don't, I can be one person in your circle or just someone that you can share with. It can be very burdensome to just keep this inside. If you're up for it, I'm up for it. If you watch this whole thing, I appreciate it. Again, contact me if you have any questions or just want to chat at groundedgalactic@gmail.com. All right. Thank you.